In today's red and blue political roundup, a one-time presidential hopeful is fighting to retain his seat in Congress as Democrats set their sights on flipping the Senate come November. Republican Senator Ted Cruz is fending off his Democratic challenger, Congressman Beto O'Rourke. The two are set to face off Monday evening for their second debate. The president will campaign for Senator Cruz next Monday as the midterm spotlight turns to vulnerable Republicans in reliably red states. However, both sides of the aisle have their fair share to worry about before Election Day. Sean Sullivan joins me now. He's a congressional reporter for The Washington Post. Sean, thanks for joining us. I want to ask you about reporting that you recently did about Democratic efforts to energize Latino voters ahead of November. You used the Texas Senate race as one example of how Democrats worry a lack of Hispanic support could undercut their bid for Congress. Why are they worried, and what are they doing about it?
Well, Elaine, they're worried for a number of reasons, and what they're looking at is the battle for the House and the battle for the Senate and the states and the districts that could decide which party controls Congress next year. And you're looking at states like Nevada, you're looking at states like Texas, as you mentioned, Arizona and Florida, and they're worried that the Democratic campaigns around the country have just not done enough to energize Latino voters in many of these communities. They're worried about turnout levels not being high enough in some of these races. And when you look at the battle for the Senate, Republicans have a very, very narrow majority. It's 51-49. So all of these races are really, really important. You have, four battleground races in the states I just mentioned, in Florida, in Texas, in Arizona, and Nevada. And even one of these races going the Republicans' way could be decisive in the battle for the Senate. So Democrats right now are looking at these states. They're looking at the level of energy in the Hispanic communities, and a lot of them are worried that the campaigns and the candidates have not done enough to engage with these communities, to energize them, to ensure that they turn out at the polls in the midterm elections next month.
Well, Democrats outraised their Republican opponents in the third quarter for the majority of House races considered toss-ups. Can the GOP close the gap in the 3 weeks before Election Day?
Well, the good news for Republicans is that they are getting donations to some of the super PACs and bigger organizations from wealthy donors. But right now, it's a really, really daunting challenge because these Democratic candidates in the battle for the House and in the battle for the Senate are raising a lot of money. And not only that, they're raising a lot of money from small donors, which speaks to the level of excitement that exists on the Democratic side right now, the energy. This is something that's worried Republican strategists for a long time, that there's just a lot more energy on the Democratic side to turn out and vote in this election. So the money is a big challenge in and of itself. Republicans are hoping that some of these bigger donations that are going to these conservative groups might help them narrow the gap a little bit, but they're also looking at this as a sign of enthusiasm and energy. So it's doubly worrisome, really, for the Republicans right now. You have all this enthusiasm on the Democratic side, and then you have all the money as a result of that enthusiasm, and it's got a lot of Republicans nervous about what's actually going to happen on November 6th.
Switching gears, Senator Heidi Heitkamp issued an apology Tuesday for a campaign ad she issued. The North Dakota lawmaker released the names of victims of domestic violence without their permission in an open letter to a local newspaper. Heitkamp is considered one of the most vulnerable Democrats going into November. Is this apology too little too late?
It might end up being that way for Senator Heitkamp. When I talk to Republican strategists over the last few weeks, they almost unanimously view her as the most vulnerable Democratic senator running for re-election this year. She's in a really, really conservative state against a Republican who's really, really well known. And when you have something like this, where she has to apologize, where she's taking a lot of criticism today, it has a lot of Republicans saying this is something that she may not be able to recover from. So, she needed everything to go her way. She had really no margin for error to make this a competitive race going into the final stretch here. And, this could be a really, really big setback to her chances, which were already, not that great, at least according to the polling that we've seen on this race over the past few weeks.
Sean, let's look ahead to 2020. Your publication, The Washington Post, is reporting the president's war chest for re-election is already over $100 million. How significant is that number, and how are grassroots donors playing a role?
Well, very significant when you look at history, when you look at other incumbent presidents who are gearing up for re-election. This is a really, really large number. And, you know, we may see many, many Democrats run for president after this election. We may see many of them even before the end of this year announce presidential campaigns. But this is a reminder of the challenge that is there to whoever the eventual Democratic nominee is. And, you know, we talk about small donors on the Democratic side in the midterms this year, where President Trump has his fair share of small donors donating to, you know, his campaign organization. So there is a level of grassroots energy behind the president, donations from regular people. It is similar to what we're seeing behind the Democrats in this election, and it's a reminder of the challenge facing Democrats thinking about running against Trump in 2020, but also Republicans. You know, there's talk right now about a potential primary challenger or challengers to Trump in 2020, given some of his, you know, some of these polls that show him as an unpopular figure. But this is a reminder of how big a force he remains in the Republican Party, how much support there is for him, how much money he has behind him. Yeah,
I would imagine that figure, $100 million at this point in 2018, would give any potential Republican challenger pause. Let me also ask you, Julian Castro said Tuesday that he's, quote, likely to launch a 2020 presidential bid. Does the former San Antonio mayor have a shot at the Democratic nomination?
Well, we're looking at a potential Democratic field right now that could be the, you know, most wide open field in years, and we could see many Democratic candidates, maybe dozens of Democratic candidates, throw their hats in the ring. And even before the midterms are out, we're already seeing candidates start to position themselves, or potential candidates, from Elizabeth Warren to Cory Booker. And so we're going to see a lot of Democrats run in this race. There really isn't an overwhelming favorite right now. This race could go any number of directions. So I think a lot of Democrats are looking at this race and saying, look, why not? Why shouldn't I throw my hat in the ring, give this thing a chance? Even if it doesn't work out, I'll raise my profile. And because you don't have a Hillary Clinton-like candidate who can clear the field this time around, I think a lot of these Democrats and the people advising them are saying, you know, take a chance. Think about jumping in this. This could be your moment. This is totally wide open.
All right. Sean Sullivan for us. Sean, thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.